Hey Sachin, how are you?
Hey Dottie, come on in. I'm Sachin Rekhi. I'm the founder and CEO of a startup called NoteJoy. It's a note-taking app for individuals and teams. Before that, I actually incubated a new product for LinkedIn called LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I'm also a blogger on product management at sachinrekhi.com. Do you want to come check out my home office?
Yes, we'd love to see where the magic happens.
All right, let's check it out. So this is my home office. This is where I spend the most of my days. And this is my office setup. Probably the most interesting thing is my big monitor. I swear by this 40-inch Dell monitor. I really can't be productive anywhere without it. Some people really love working in coffee shops, but I need the productivity of having a big monitor. So I spend a lot of time here. My other favorite part of this office is actually this chair, where I do a lot of my morning reading.
So diving into the questions that we have for you today, you have one of the best product management blogs out there. And as a writer and thought leader, I know you're inspired by a lot of great books about product and business. I see a few next to you right now. Would you mind sharing your favorite takeaways from your favorite books?
Yeah, definitely. I'll share some of the ones I've been recently reading. The first one is this book called The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. Rick is actually a legendary producer that's worked with great artists like Adele. We got Dexter here joining me. But the best part of this book is he talks really about how to develop taste, how to actually be very thoughtful about developing our tastes as product designers, which we all are as product managers. And he talks about really instilling this idea of reviewing the greatest works that all exist out there, the greatest products, as a great way to build taste. So that's my first favorite one. The next favorite is this book called Creative Selection by Ken Kosienda. He actually talks about creating the early iPhone, and in particular, the keyboard on the iPhone. My big takeaway from the book is actually creating innovation is always a really messy process of trial and error. And he talks about that, which has been really helpful for me when I think about building new products and innovating as well. The next one I'll talk about is The Everything Store by Brad Stone. What I love about this is my primer on product strategy. There isn't a better strategist out there than Bezos himself, and so I absolutely love this book and kind of learning how to think about strategy.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing. And I bet Dexter is a voracious reader as well.
Oh yes, this is actually his favorite spot when I'm reading, right next to me, and keeps me company the whole time.
So next question for you, Sachin. You've founded 3 startups. You could say you're a bit of a serial entrepreneur, and you've built products at LinkedIn and Microsoft. I'm curious to hear some of the biggest lessons you've learned specifically about product market fit and product management.
You know, the biggest thing I've realized actually is there's kind of 3 different types of product managers. The first is your typical builder. This is the feature PM that's actually building new features for an existing product. The next one is the tuner. These are your growth PMs that are responsible for optimizing an existing flow or an existing experience. And finally, you have the third type, which is the innovator, which is really responsible for bringing a new product to market for the first time. Now, it turns out when you're in that innovator role, working on product market fit, working on new product development, it requires a very unique skill set that isn't required for the other 2 types of PMs. And so I've spent a lot of my time trying to figure out what that skill set is. Things like dealing with ambiguity, dealing with not much user data to then make decisions based on. And you also have to deal with the fact that there's a lot more things you can pivot on. Things like your target audience, your user acquisition strategy, and your monetization strategy. Often things you don't have to worry about when you're a builder PM or a tuner PM. So that's really what I've come to realize is important, that there's a different skill set that you need to optimize for when you're really trying to be that innovator. I was gonna go grab a coffee in the kitchen. Want to join me?
Yeah, that sounds great. We're always down for caffeine.
All right, let's do it. All right, come on, buddy. right.
So Sachin, in your blog, you talk a lot about the lean startup methodology. Would you mind sharing some of your thoughts around that with us?
Yeah, so Eric Ries gave us this whole lean startup methodology, and it's been super helpful to think about how do we actually bring new products to market from scratch. But the reality is this was almost invented a decade ago, and we've learned a lot more about how do you actually build great products. And so we've realized that there's actually a couple of shortcomings with the lean startup methodology. Things like its focus on rapid experimentation instead of starting with a compelling strategy. Oftentimes, it actually now makes more sense to start with at least a hypothesis of what your strategy is. The second thing is it really focuses on minimum viable products. The challenge is minimum viable products can lead to failing too fast. And finally, it really overemphasizes a focus on product instead of deliberate growth. But we've learned that it's so important to be thinking about product and growth at the same time.
And I know you've come up with your own methodology around this called the deliberate startup. Could you share a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, so the idea with the deliberate startup is really an evolution of the lean startup to make up for some of these shortcomings. A couple of key attributes about the deliberate startup is we start first with a hypothesis on what the strategy is. We call that the PMF narrative, and we distill sort of the strategy hypotheses you have right at the beginning when you're beginning your journey on building a new product. The second thing is we encourage you to have other validation techniques beyond just building a minimum viable product. Things like prototypes and pre-sales, which help you to validate your idea well before you need to actually go build an MVP, which ends up being a really useful tool. The final thing is we really have a focus in the methodology on growth, on deliberate growth. And we talk about how do you get those early users from day one and ultimately go into talking about how do you ultimately scale to a much larger audience. All right, want to go join me in the family room?
That sounds lovely.
All right.
I see Dexter's already there and ready to
Yes,
go.
he's ready to join us. You know, it's funny, we used to call this our family room, but we have a 3-year-old daughter named Zoe, and she's really taken over the place, and it's become much more of her play space than our family room.
So pivoting a little bit, Sachin, you know, the economy is on everyone's mind right now. I'm wondering if today's environment of uncertainty has affected NoteJoy's product and prioritization strategy in any way.
Yeah, you know, I think what's really interesting is that these days it's not good enough to build a product that adds value. Everyone is so focused on cost cutting and making sure they're getting strong ROI on all of their investments. And so we target small to medium businesses with NoteJoy, and we have seen a pullback in spend from that audience. Now, one of the things we're thinking about to address this is actually a fairly material change to our pricing and packaging policies. We're actually planning on moving away from a per seat model to actually kind of a bundled seat model, really just to make NoteJoy more affordable than the alternatives and to make us a way that not only small businesses could be more productive, but potentially even save money as well.
And on a positive note, have you seen any unexpected opportunities emerge?
Yeah, one of the most interesting ones is actually this idea that there was all this amazing talent that was locked up in big tech companies like Facebook and Amazon and Google, that would never leave those companies because it was just too lucrative for them to stay. And actually what I'm seeing now in a lot of the companies that I advise is they're actually now able to attract some of that talent, finally to get them to move away from some of these big tech companies for the first time and join as executives in early stage startups. That's an incredible opportunity to really try to attract that talent now that didn't even exist when the economy was thriving.
Really interesting. And Sachin, I'm looking outside. It's looking like a gorgeous day, and it looks like you have a great little seating area. Would you like to continue our conversation out there?
Let's do it. It's a beautiful day outside.
Let's go.
All right. Let's check out the backyard.
What a beautiful day.
It is really nice today.
So I'm curious to hear about your daily rituals as a product leader.
Yeah, I really swear by 3 different rituals I pretty much do every single day. The first is I start my day with this morning reading routine where I try to stay abreast of what's going on in the industry and in tech in general. That involves reading articles shared by folks I'm following on Twitter or LinkedIn, or reading other places like TechMeme, which is great to get sort of a zeitgeist of what's going on in our industry. So that's the first one where I start my morning with it. The second thing I always do is look at dashboards for how things are going with NoChoy. And we have dashboards for user acquisition, for engagement, and finally for monetization. And so those 3 are the ones that I look at in the morning to sort of get a sense of how the business is doing and build my intuition for those daily fluctuations that happen in the business. The final thing I like to do is really spend time every day hearing directly from our customers. We've built what I call a feedback river, which is a channel that aggregates feedback from a ton of different sources. Things like Net Promoter Score, canceled account reasons, customer feedback. And I can scroll through this, which we've actually created as a Slack channel, as an easy way to hear directly from customers every morning what they're doing, how they're feeling about the product, what they're loving, and what they're using.
I want to know what your top career tips are for product managers looking to, continually grow in their field.
Probably the thing that people ask me most about is career transitions, when you're looking at what that great next role is going to be for you. I'm often asked about working at small companies versus large companies because I've had that experience. Now, what I always tell people is probably the most important thing to think about is actually how fast that company is growing. The faster it's growing, the better. Because when it's growing fast, it means there's going to be lots of opportunities for you to grow in roles and opportunities at that company. And so that's the thing I encourage people to look at. Wealthfront actually puts out a great list of the fastest growing sort of mid-sized companies, which is really useful as you think about how to find and plan that next career transition of your own.
All right, I'm taking notes. And we've reached the final question for today. I'm curious, what is the biggest lesson that you've learned in this past very uncertain year?
Probably the biggest thing is it's really hard to predict what the next big technology platform is going to be. We just saw this wave of excitement around cryptocurrencies, and all the associated technologies, but that's sort of not as exciting right now as it was even just months ago. Now we're seeing this new wave of excitement around AI, and in particular, generative AI. And we're all wondering, is this the next big wave? And so I think it's often difficult to predict what that's going to be. The thing I always tell folks, and I spend a lot of time thinking about, is you got to go find out what are those real customer problems that you can solve with these technologies, because that ends up being the thing that really enables us to find something that's likely to stick in this next wave of innovation and technology.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today, Sachin, and thank you for having us at your home.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure.
Amazing. Thank you.